welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of cloud computing. Today, my guests are from Firstline Software. They're an R&D services company, and they help SaaS providers. So first up, we have Konstantin Polukhin and Peter Vaihansky. Guys, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Peter Vaihansky. I'm the general manager for the Americas for Firstline. So to get things started, let me just very briefly introduce Firstline to you. Like Rich just said, we're a custom software development service provider, and we work with many customers around the world, both enterprise customers and technology vendors, software and solution vendors, including SaaS vendors as well. And we serve customers ranging from Fortune 1000 household names and market leaders to smaller growth companies and even technology startups. We're global. Our presence on this planet ranges from Asia Pacific, Western Europe, United States. Obviously, North America is a very important market for us. Eastern Europe, in particular, in Russia, where we maintain our development facilities. And we specialize in several verticals, including things like online media, enterprise content management, database marketing, and cloud computing, which is sort of a horizontal that cuts across many industry verticals. So what we would like to talk about today has grown out of our experience helping some of our technology customers deal with the challenges around cloud and SaaS, and in particular how the model meshes with the topic of data quality management. Obviously, cloud is on everybody's mind and on top of everybody's priority list. Gartner's predicting that worldwide SaaS revenues are about to reach $14.5 billion this year, growing by 18% from the year before, and predicting further that by about 2015, we're going to see SaaS revenues topping $22 billion worldwide. IDC is telling us that in about 2 years, 2/3 of all new product offerings from ISVs are going to be delivered as SaaS. In its recent cloud computing survey, the CIO magazine has discovered that 62 or more of CIOs questioned in the survey cite SaaS as their top investment priority. The adopters who have made the move to SaaS obviously enjoy many benefits, such as the move from the CapEx to the OpEx model, lower infrastructure investments, obviously near immediate availability, fast deployment, scalability, seamless updates, reduced need for IT personnel to maintain the in-house hardware and software applications. The adoption process is obviously not without its concerns or problems, and the list of such concerns is easily topped by security, which is probably one of the better explored areas or explored concerns. And the SaaS providers have by now learned to address these concerns in a fairly comprehensive manner, both in terms of physical security of their data centers and software-related security issues. But what we want to talk about today is focus on perhaps a lesser talked about concern, namely the data quality management and how it's affected by the introduction of SaaS. Now, in most surveys done on this topic today, you'll find that people cite data quality management as still a major obstacle to cloud adoption. Ventana research has found that for almost 2/3 of organizations, the most common pattern of data movement is between on-premise applications. But now, these days, as many must combine cloud-based data and on-premise data as need to combine on-premise data sources, and both figures stand at almost 90%. So we're talking about having 9 out of 10 organizations having to deal with the issue of moving the cloud data back on-premise. Indeed, Ventana states more generally that the largest gap between needs and capabilities not yet addressed is in moving cloud data on-premises. And in the study that we mentioned here on the slide, only 15% of organizations have completed a data quality initiative, and if you look at the master data management, that number drops to 5%. And only 13% have implemented a data governance initiative for cloud data. So we're seeing that even with organizations that are mature enough to realize that data quality and governance processes are important and they need to be implemented and followed, when it comes to the cloud, with respect to cloud, these issues are just beginning to surface for most companies, and most people are perhaps not quick enough to apply the data quality management-related lessons of the past to this new paradigm. So apparently, introducing SaaS into this paradigm creates additional complexities, and that's exactly what we want to address in this presentation. With this, I want to give the mic to Konstantin. He's our managing partner here in the U.S. He's a 20-year veteran of the industry, has participated in creating a lot of the products in this space and also delivering complex custom solutions in some of the most data-intensive areas, most notably database marketing. So Konstantin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Peter. I'm taking it. So taking a look at the business, day-to-day operation of the business would basically show you that it's supposed to interact with hundreds of applications of different kind in order to facilitate data feeds and consumption and getting the data back from the applications. And all the data is resigned in the 360 repository of the business, view of the business. And extremely important piece to understand that this thing doesn't come at one time. It was evolutionary process when a business would deploy one application after another, and every deployment would be accomplished by an integration of this application into this fabric of 360 degrees of the digital infrastructure of the business. And a typical story would be that business would decide about the application, and the integration process will follow the rigorous process of ensuring that all the data feeds that goes back and forth are checked correctly and integrated in a process that we called data governance. And this data governance actually oversees all interaction inside of this 360-degree business infrastructure. Now, as Peter mentioned before, there is a huge appeal to use this new functionality from the cloud. And if we start talking about how fast you can deploy it, cost of ownership, the latest and greatest algorithms, everything sounds great, except, well, more application brings to your business, more critical the data feeds that we're talking about become to the business. So however you cut it, you either have to bring the data from the cloud if you choose the route when this application that you're choosing in the cloud has the business data of your business there, and you need to incorporate the output of that application back to your 360 degrees because it's important, right? Or you facing the situation when you need to bring a similar functionality to the cloud application to your premise. And the funniest part is that everyone is caught between these two extremes. And our idea was to see if we can help people to use cloud with conjunction with on-premise data without compromising those quality control that has been established for duration of the business. Peter, why don't you give us a real-life example of how this situation can arise for your company?
Oh, sure. Well, and this is actually very close to an actual real-life example that we've been able to observe. So let's take an organization, let's say a bank. It doesn't have to be a large bank. Let's say it's a regional bank. And that bank is relatively advanced in its IT, and they already collect and manage large amounts of data and have made considerable investments in building a reliable master database and implementing the data quality initiative and processes and procedures to maintain the quality of that data. Now let's look at what would happen if that bank decided to deploy an application that is in some way critical to the business. For example, if they wanted to use a platform for cross-channel database marketing, something that is a pretty hot industry these days. Let's say if they wanted to, what would happen if they wanted to use the application for their database marketing, for their direct marketing, but deploy it in the cloud? Now, if you look at just creating a purpose-built database for such a highly involved function as database marketing, and from the standpoint of data processing, it is pretty involved, that would be a serious project in and of itself. Now, however, if such a system is to be deployed in the cloud, then maintaining the quality of the in-house data will now require ongoing integration, rigorous and serious integration with the cloud to keep the structure of the core database and all the unique identifiers and the overall structure of that database intact, and not to lose that quality that has been so painstakingly built into that infrastructure. Essentially, what we're looking at is potential for significant data duplication, serious integration overhead, and related data quality risks, not to mention all the extra work, obviously, and the cost that entails. So considering, wouldn't it be nice for that bank or for that organization to have the option of keeping the master data store on-premise, where it's still governed by the internal data quality and management policies and procedures, rather than have significant volumes of data duplicated and maintained in the cloud at the same time. And we're talking about both transactional and personal data. Obviously, if it's a bank, in this particular case with a database marketing application. So we're talking about transactional data, personal data, now combined with the data generated by the platform, the cloud platform itself, such as promotional history and response history. Wouldn't it be nice to have that option to keep that master database on-premise? If there was a way for the bank to avoid putting so much data in the cloud and still use the cloud application, still use the business logic, by reworking the computing process so that the bank retains control of the data on-premise and the cloud is allowed to borrow the relevant data for processing. Now, we do understand that this sort of has this ring of having your cake and eating it too, in a way. But let us give you a little more detail of how this approach emerged and what we're, what we have currently in the works. Like we said in the beginning, working with one of our technology customers, emerging from this process of exploration. So essentially, what we have is moving from this paradigm, right, where you have both the on-premise data storage and also in-cloud data storage, to the paradigm where we're able to leverage the on-premise data storage without the significant duplication of data, but still rely on the value and access that value that the in-cloud business logic can provide. Konstantin, why don't you take the reins again and tell us a little more about how this solution is structured?
Sure. Well, let's start with the concept. The concept of the adapter basically encompasses the three things that we needed to provide in order to make it workable. First of all, we need to ensure that communications over internet is actually stable for us. And we're talking about layers of communication that we introduce, and plus this communication goes to the cloud and on-premise database. So we introduced this concept that we are working through asynchronous queues mechanism, and that would allow us to stabilize unstable network through our internal needs if need be. The second part is that we mentioned that certain brains of business logic needs to be part of this connector. We're trying to keep as much business logic in cloud as possible, but still there are instances when this logic needs to be introduced. And the second part of this connector has extension to data layers from one perspective, and a notion of how this logic needs to be executed on a data source. It will need the ability to parallel processing, collect data back from the response from the database, and provide backfeed to cloud application. And the third piece of it is how we actually enable this cloud application accessing the central data mart without decomposing this database on a client side. We are providing mapping mechanism when we introducing a logical map to physical data source, where we exposing only data elements that this particular application does need for operating in their specific vertical arena. So those three pieces combined together brought us to the structure that, if we take a closer look to that, looks like the more architecture-oriented portion. So as I mentioned before, we have asynchronous calls that using message queuing across the entire internet, and this gives us stability. The first piece that we called Cloud Manager Service is facing to cloud application, and this purpose is basically communicate back and forth between cloud application and our adapter, and hence the on-premise data through accepting well-specified contracts. And these well-specified contracts are handled correctly with this Cloud Manager Service that does only very managerial things. It executes, it stops, it runs, it collects the stats, it knows where to put pieces together if something falls apart, and it passes the commands to the brains in Graph Manager Service. The execution graph is the place where we can disassemble the call from the cloud in smaller pieces and create the consecutive actions on this call, where those smaller pieces would be pushed to a very small, last layer, which is Earth Runner. And Earth Runner is executing simple command against the database, and it knows nothing about business logic, about mapping. It just executes the request to the database, gets result, and provides result back to the upper level, which gets assembled and passed back to our Cloud Manager, and Cloud Manager provides response to the cloud application. So this is the paradigm that we live in, and we're actually implementing it with our partner, who is a SaaS provider, and we're extending their market reach by enabling them to use this approach for a larger client base that would rather have their data sitting on their premise and be governed by them. And this application will be soon available to our partner.
Thank you, Konstantin. Just a quick comment on the last point that you made. In fact, this is a product of joint exploration with, like we said, one of our customers who are, in fact, a SaaS provider. And this was initiated because of indications of demand from some of the prospects of that particular SaaS provider, who were very interested in the functionality provided by the cloud application itself, but weren't sure that they would be able to make this dive and put so much data in the cloud. However, this is actually easily applicable to other SaaS providers as well. The secret sauce, obviously, is going to be in the mapping layer, and that's going to be the highly customizable, highly custom part, I should say. But in principle, we don't see any reason why other SaaS providers would not be interested, should they have a segment of their potential market that for whom the ability to keep the data on-premise is a factor in their buying.
Well, thanks for that presentation, guys. I'd like to go back to your core idea in the beginning. We were talking about this idea of data quality, and I'm a little fuzzy on that. Or what are the parameters, or are there ways to measure data quality? Are we talking about redundancy or noise? What is that about?
Well, now data quality typically gets into mix in several venues. One is, as I mentioned before, we're talking about multiple applications that are using this data source, right? And when you have access to multiple applications, there is an input and output from the applications. Sometimes applications actually trying to change the data sets, the pre-existing data sets. And what is the accounting view of the world can be different from, to say, database marketing. And there is a rule how to keep a history of those changes and ensuring that this 360-degree takes the only those changes that are applicable to the business. So there is a competition between new information to come, and there is arbitration on what is considered to be clean information, for instance, right? Secondly, there are a lot of different feeds that by nature have a different format. For instance, you can have different presentation of the dates. If you have global company, that date representation in the United States is different from Europe. You need to ensure that you're converting it correctly. There is case conversion for low case and upper case when you do specific operations. For instance, printing something out, you need to make sure that you're printing in correct format, in correct heading, and this information is presented correctly. When you searching the database, the search engine very often is geared towards case-sensitive or not sensitive data, and so on and so forth. Plus, there is a historical data that you need to ensure is correct. For instance, in the United United States, we have 25% of people moving every, to say, 10 months in a large metropolitan areas. And in order to maintain the recency for that piece, it's very difficult just to apply. Well, there are some mechanisms like fuzzy logic that can associate a person with the same name with several locations that you have in your database. But you know by fuzzy logic that this person actually lives in this address. And this is a daily exercise that this data quality is provided back to the corporate. And there are many other instances. Did I answer your question, Jake? Is it a long answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was going to go back to, you guys do R&D for SaaS providers, but can you tell us about the origins of this as a product? I mean, did you have to solve a problem for a customer and you saw an opportunity to, monetize that and make it something that would grow and maybe capture new business? How did that work?
Sure. Well, I'll take that if that's okay. Yeah. Basically, we have a relationship with one of our customers for whom we're helping them with some of their product development efforts, and in the process of discussing the product roadmap and and planning our development process together. A topic came up of certain prospects being, like I said, being interested in the functionality that this particular cloud app provides, but not being sure whether they want to make the jump and build this cloud-based database. It's a very involved process. A lot of data would have to travel into the cloud, and some of the customers feel a bit apprehensive about that. In particular, for example, in the financial services industry, the example of the bank that we gave earlier is no accident. There may be compliance issues for financial services organizations that could make putting so much information into the cloud difficult or challenging or more costly, for example. So there's a definite demand signal coming from the market that there's a sort of a conflict, right? A person is looking at this offering and saying, "Oh, this is really good. I would really love for my business to be able to leverage this application." However, this not being able to keep all of my data on premise is really a deal breaker, and it seemed like an impasse until in our joint discussions with the customer we started putting this idea on the table, and eventually we took the initiative of building the code, the actual physical code, to implement this idea. And this year, I don't want to make any promises, but we're looking at a very interesting year in terms of being able to deploy this with specific customers in the field. And once that is done, once that was done, it became very clear to us that there's no need to limit ourselves to this particular field and this particular partnership. This algorithm and this solution works precisely because you can abstract away from the specifics and use the general principles. So what we want to do in the future is obviously we want to see the successful takeoff of this initiative with this one particular cloud product vendor. But once that is done, and we will dedicate more bandwidth to going out to the market and talking to other SaaS providers about whether in their particular world there is an element of demand that whose appetite could be whet, so to speak, by bringing up this particular offering. Like, how would you like it to be able to use the cloud application with all the goodies that brings? And again, lower TCO, faster deployments, seamless upgrades, all of that good stuff, while still keeping full control of the data, physical control of the data within your infrastructure.
Well, great. Well, guys, kind of a wrap-up question here. If our listeners got their ears perked up about this kind of solution, how did they best engage with you guys? Do you work with partners? What would you suggest?
Oh, that's very easy. We have a slide right here with some contact information on it. If you just send an email to cloud@firstlinesoftware.com, and we'll set up a time to talk. It's as simple as that. I mean, we're a relatively small firm. We have about 350 engineers, all said and done globally. And we work with several dozen customers, a lot of them in North America, but also in Western Europe. But we haven't really had, at least this year in 2012, we haven't really made too much effort to proactively reach out to other SaaS providers. So if there's any interest out there, guys, you know where to find us, firstlinesoftware.com, and email is cloud@firstlinesoftware.com.
Well, terrific. Well, Peter and Konstantin, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
You bet. You bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of cloud computing.